Good evening, and welcome to the annual meeting of the town of Sevastopol on Tuesday, April 18th at 6 p.m. I would like you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. My agenda, hopefully you all have a copy of our agenda. It says meet and greet and introduction of, it says new town officers, electors and guests. I want to change the word new to old town officers. All right, electors and guests. So if you would introduce yourself, even though I know who you are, to the rest of the crowd.
Ashley Stotts, Sevastopol, Crew Chief.
Yeah, thank you.
Dick Weidman, South View Road.
Denise Shenbear, South Lake Road.
Jean Tice, Bay Shore Drive.
Dale Volko, Windermere Drive.
Jim Dillon, Lori Lane.
Tim Newman, Fire Chief.
Phil today was assistant fire chief survey.
Cool. And our two videographers are
Derek Demise, North Country View Road.
Larry Chapman, Glidden Drive.
all right. Well, welcome and thank you. Somebody has put something on here regarding the oath of office, so I'm going to guess that some of the old town officers need to do that. Would that be correct, Amy?
That's correct.
All right.
The old bill.
The old town officers. So that would be those of us that were reelected.
Yeah, if you could stand up and raise your right hand. I, and then state your name.
I, Dan Russell,
Having been elected to, and then say your office.
having been elected to the Board of Chairman,
Supervisor.
Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
And will
faithfully and impartially
discharge duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're legal. All right, we, by the way, at the annual meeting, you're certainly welcome to make a motion to approve minutes or second or whatever. In this case, we need to take a look at the minutes from our previous annual meeting, which was April 19th of 2022. And if anybody feels the urge, you can make a motion to accept and put those on file.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by, is that Mr. Vogel? It is Mr. Vogel. And a second by?
I'll second.
Derek.
Derek. All right, motion by Mr. Vogel and Mr. Derek to accept the minutes from the previous meeting. All those in favor, and everybody may vote. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amazing. All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, so this evening, we put together an agenda just to have something so that you have a guideline for where we're going. And we're going to start with a presentation review of the 22 audited financial statements, which we have done the last couple of years with Elizabeth, who has taped it and is available for questions. That'll be followed by the annual fire report from the fire chief. And then we have Ashley Stotts, who's going to do the EMR review for 2022. Then Ms. Vogel will do the broadband update. For those of you who are not aware of it, we'll just briefly recap that. And I'll finish up with a quick year in review of some of the highlights from 2022. After which we'll go to visions, future needs, et cetera, et cetera. So we will start with the presentation of the audited financial statements. If you're ready to go, Laddie.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Elizabeth McMasters. I am a director out of our Green Bay office for Clifton Larson Allen. First off, I want to thank everyone who works with us throughout the audit process, members of the board, and also a special shout out to Amy. She is wonderful in getting us everything that we need in order to accomplish the audit. And there's a lot of requests that we have. So her, positive energy and her willingness to get us everything that we need definitely definitely doesn't go unnoticed. So thank everyone involved in this process. So my objectives today are to go through the audit report. I'll point out there really wasn't much that changed this year in terms of standards. So I'll point out some of those high level things, go over our opinion, talk a little bit about the ARPA funding and how that shows up in this report, and then point out some of the budget to actual items and talk about, those fund balance items that everyone is usually interested about every year. And if there are any questions, please let me know. Amy has my contact information, and she certainly can give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'd be more than happy to walk through any further questions that you have. So starting on page 1, this is our opinion. This is the whole goal of our audit. We issued what's known as a clean opinion to the town. So what that means is we believe these financial statements are materially correct. What that means is we use a formula. We're not going to necessarily find, every nickel, dime, $100, even $1,000, that might be in error in the financial statements, but we use a formula for what we deem to be materially correct, and based on the standards, these financial statements are materially correct. So that's the highest mark you can get in terms of issuing an opinion. Looking at page 2, this is just a good reminder what the auditor's responsibilities are for the financial statements. You can see there's that paragraph that starts towards the top, and then into the bulleted section, it talks about, based on the standards, we're required to use our professional judgment. We identify and assess risks of material misstatements on the financial statements. So again, that means we're looking, not at $1,000 error or so on, but we use a formula to make sure that they're materially correct. We gain an understanding of the internal controls relevant to the audit, and then design our audit procedures around those internal controls based on what we see. So less controls, more that we have to do. It's a balancing act, and we use our judgment in order to make sure that we're able to provide this opinion. We also take a look at the accounting policies and the appropriateness of the policies. I can tell you that this year there was a governmental accounting standards board change that took place this year. It didn't affect the town this year, and we did work with Amy to make sure that the town is in compliance with that standard. I have a feeling there's another one that's very similar. It's coming up next year. It's a subscription-based agreement, and it's the recording of that. We'll work through that one next year, but the short lingo for that, we call it the SBITAs. That one will be coming down the pipeline. So we'll work through that one, but for this year, for 2022, the town was safe and didn't have any major changes because of standards, which is kind of a relief because they've been, year after year, there's been many changes with the standards. So then that is the high-level overview of the opinion. So skipping ahead, I'm going to page 6. This is what's known as the government-wide statement of net position. So there's 2 different sets of financial statements within a governmental unit. This is the first set. This records items on a long-term basis. So debt, which I know the town had some this year. Anything with WRS, it's shown on a long-term basis. So this set won't necessarily reconcile to like the budget and actual reports that you're used to looking at during board meetings. So I'll just point out the high level things that are different on this one, and we'll take a look at the budget to actual statements a little later. So towards the top in the assets section, you'll see that net pension asset that's relating to the WRS retirement system. You may remember in previous years that the system is a fully funded system. It hovers between slightly overfunded, slightly underfunded. You can see in the 2021 column, it was also a net pension asset. So it's continually stayed at a slightly overfunded pension plan, which is great. Those benefits are available to the people when they retire and as they're in retirement, and there's no risk that those payments, will not be able to be paid is essentially what that means. So great position for the state, and then it shows for the town being a participant in that plan. So about a middle way down the page in the liabilities section, you'll see the line unearned revenues ARPA. So in 2022, the town received their second tranche of the ARPA funding. I know there's probably been some heavy discussions on how to spend that money, and the town is probably working through that. I can tell you that that is very, very common right now. 2022 seemed to be kind of a quiet year as municipalities were really gearing up. Okay, we think we have a plan. Now we got to figure out how we're going to actually execute it. So it was actually a quiet year in terms of showing the money as an actual revenue, because in order to show it as a revenue, the money has to be spent on an eligible project. So this is why it's sitting in this unearned line, and that's just because, you know, it's a holding place until those expenditures actually occur. So I fully expect to see, you know, in 2023, maybe some of that money, maybe all of that money could be shown as an actual revenue to line up with the expenditures that they're actually spent on. So just keep in mind that's a holding place until that money is actually spent. So skipping ahead to page 8, this is the start of the second set of financial statements within here. This set will look more like the budget to actual reports and so on that you're used to reviewing. So the main item that I want to point out on page 8 is the fund balance reserves at year end. You can see those in the categories restricted. That didn't change a whole lot, sitting at 13 grand from last year as well. The committed, which those are the funds that are set aside by board action for specific purposes. The assigned category is at that one increased 248 grand. That is the amount that is set aside for the subsequent year's budget, meaning those are monies set aside for the 2023 budget. And then the unassigned category is the catch-all for anything that doesn't fit any of those other categories. So the town stayed very, very consistent at just, in that $175,000 mark. Usually as a measure of the town's financial stability, we take whatever is in that unassigned category and we compare it to the total expenditures. If we look at 2022, which is on page 10 of the report, there was a significant amount of capital outlay. So it's a little bit tough to kind of balance because that capital outlay can increase and decrease in different years depending on what's going on in the town's plans. But if we were to remove that capital outlay and just look at these are the core expenditures that the town has, fund balance is sitting at about 14% of that, and we usually like to see it right around that 15%. Some places want higher, like 20% or even 25% is on a higher end, but there is nothing wrong with sitting in 15%. And what that means is usually at that point your cash flows are able to sustain the changes in when your revenues are coming in during the year. Obviously, you have a big increase in revenues and cash when property tax revenues are coming in during the year, and then it's kind of a lull until those state aid payments start coming through. So the town is sitting, right about where they should be, and as long as that's where they're comfortable at with that 15%, I can tell you that that's very normal across many municipalities. The town also has significant amounts set aside in the committed and assigned categories, which obviously those can be changed as, different town plans are put in place. So there is wiggle room in what that unassigned amount could be. So those are all good indicators of a good financial position. So in more detail on page 10, you can see there was the capital outlay line that had quite a significant balance. And so that correlates with, if you look just below that section in the other financing sources, there was long-term debt issued during the year. So obviously a significant portion of that capital outlay was paid for with that debt. So that's a balancing act, obviously, and great to see that, monitoring and making sure you're not taking a hit to fund balance and so on, making sure that you're doing improvements that are wanting to be done and working through that. Obviously, I believe it was the pickleball courts and the baseball field, so I'm sure that's a great improvement to the town. Overall, there's a net change in fund balance, a decrease of just 25 grand, which is very, very minimal. You can, last year in 2021, there was an increase in fund balance of 76 grand. So that's all a balancing act and, no harm, no foul in decreasing that fund balance using a little bit of those reserves. So skipping to page 12, this is a high level detail of the budget to actual just on the function level rather than in more minute details. We'll show those details in the back. You can see up in the intergovernmental section, there was the actual came in under budget, and that's actually just because of the ARPA funding. And that's because we don't want to show it in revenue in this year because there aren't expenditures to show that you earned that revenue at this point in time. So like I said, it's sitting on the balance sheet in that holding spot until those expenditures are incurred. And at that point, then we'll move it into a revenue so that, those will balance out in the year that they occur. Down in the expenditure section, you can see in the public works line, the town came in under budget of just over 100 grand. That was mainly road construction came in under budget and snow removal was under budget. So all right, on page 13, this is just a reminder. This was a standard that was put in place a couple of years ago. And what that standard did was it required the breakout of any funds that are held for others as of year end to be shown in their own funds. So it's called the custodial fund. And what is encompassed in the data that's on page 13 is the money that is held for other taxing jurisdictions as of December 31st. So that means the advanced tax collections that are collected in December that actually belong to the county or the schools or tech college and so on. That's what is shown on page 13. So this was also that way in 2021, but this standard was only put in place a couple of years ago. So just a refresher on that. Skipping ahead to page 26. The rest of the notes, there's really not much that changed in there. Page 26, the only reason I wanted to point this out is because it shows kind of the increase in the capital assets relating to the pickleball court and then the baseball fields. So if you look at the construction work in progress line towards the top of that schedule, there was a few costs that were in 2021. Obviously, the bulk of the work, there was, $264,000 spent in 2022, and all of that gets decreased as it gets put in service and it will now be depreciated, and you can see it shows up. Portion of it is in land improvements and then there's buildings and other improvements. So just wanted to highlight that. Going to page 27, this is a little bit new in this year's report, just because the town issued debt, so there's added disclosures relating to that debt. So you can see that right at the top, $175,000 was issued in state trust fund loans this year, and then it gives the detail of those loans, such as the principal and interest maturities towards the bottom of the page. All right, then most of the next section, or this bulk of this section, is relating to the WRS pension. There's a lot of disclosures relating to that. Those haven't changed since last year. So I'll skip ahead to page 36. Page 36 is the description of, or the more detailed description of what's in fund balance that I mentioned on that balance sheet page a little bit ago. So you can see that restricted amount that is for the emergency medical responder donations, that 13 grand, very similar to the previous year amount. Then the committed, a reminder that committed is the amounts that are set aside through board action. There's an amount for revaluation and for broadband. And then towards the bottom of the page is the assigned fund balance, and that's assigned through approval of the budget for 2023. So going to the next page, on page 37, this discusses a little bit about that minimum general fund balance policy, normally around that 15%. And like I mentioned, if we removed that capital outlay component of this year's expenditures, the town would be right just shy of that 15%. What I think is important to keep in mind with this disclosure, it does show that, the unassigned fund balance is 175 grand. and the minimum fund balance amount, it does show that, you know, 232,000 would make it at that 15%. But what I think is important is that, you know, the town has plenty of debt capacity available if the town were ever to need that to take out debt on anything. But also the town has done strategic planning to set aside other funds. And if an emergency came up or, you know, something had to be done, there is wiggle room, and the town board can decide to uncommit the funds to be used for other purposes. So there is a lot of wiggle room. There's a lot of options for the town that I wouldn't be concerned with, you know, what's shown in that note. So skipping ahead to page 42, this is the detailed budget to actual. A couple items that I'll point out on here. Up in the taxes section, you'll see the line that says public accommodation taxes. That's the room tax revenue. That came in significantly higher again for the town, so that's a great positive economic outlook for the town, right? Down in the intergovernmental section at the very bottom, you'll see that other state grants, that is for ARPA that I mentioned earlier because we can't recognize that revenue this year. Going to the next page, this is the start of the expenditure component of the budget to actual schedule. And you'll see down in the public works section, I had pointed out the road maintenance and construction was under budget, and then the same thing with the snow removal line was under budget. On page 46, this is a required report that we issue, the internal control report. It starts to discuss the findings that we had, and I can point to you directly to where those findings are. They start on page 48. I'll just go over those briefly. We had a finding for adjustments to the town's financial records. Oftentimes, you know, we're doing different adjusting entries just to make sure that the town is compliant with the standards. And some of these are very specialized, and they're not items that people are used to doing day to day, such as the ARPA revenue entry. So because we do entries like this, we are required just to disclose that we did have to make adjustments to the town's financial records in order to make sure that they were complying with the standards. But like I mentioned, ARPA is one of those items that we had to adjust for this year. It's not something that I would consider, or that shouldn't, you know, necessarily continue 10 years from now or anything like that. So it's kind of those one-off items that happen year to year. On page 49, this is the finding for the segregation of duties relating to the clerk treasurer position. So it's just not physically feasible to hire two different positions in order to make sure that you're segregating duties the way that they should be according to the standards. Because of that, one person is handling everything. Obviously, that adds a little bit of risk to the audit, and we do have to have a finding relating to that. And on page 50, this is the finding for the preparation of the annual report. That is still the same thing continuing from the previous year. You know, all of these findings are very, very common across municipalities of this size. I wouldn't anticipate that these necessarily go away. They're just so common, and it's just not worth the cost and expense, you know, in order to make these go away, because there's so much, you know, that you'd have to know, for example, in order to prepare these financial statements. We have an entire team to make sure that we're complying with these standards, because there's just so much to them. So that is everything that I wanted to go through. Again, if there are any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. Amy has my contact information. And again, thank you to everyone at the town. We really appreciate, you know, being able to work with the town as the auditors and working through the financial statements every year. Thank you and have a great night.
Does anyone have any questions with respect to the financial statements? We certainly can take a stab at trying to answer them or avoid the question altogether. That'd be an honest opinion, I'm sorry. Yes?
Is Amy the only one covered under WRS?
I'm
Yes.
sorry, say again?
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't hear. Okay.
Retirement system.
Oh, yes, sorry. She's not retiring yet. She may be wanting to, but she has a long way to go before she'll have enough money in there.
Yeah.
In fact, we're cutting back
We're not gonna-
our payments.
Keep her for 24.
We're not going to let her.
After 2024, maybe.
Yes.
I had posed a question to Elizabeth when I always compare the previous year to the current audit. And my question, the thing that stood out to me was usually in the detailed report, we include that cash applied. And her response, and you won't see it on here in this report, you saw it last report, on the detail, like on page 42. You won't see it going forward because she said it's not really a revenue. We used to list it under miscellaneous. She said it's not really a revenue, it's just a use of reserve funds, so that will not be reflected. She had mentioned that our budget statement does not always
Always
exactly
jive,
jive with the audit, so that was one item that you won't see in the audit going forward.
I mean, I think the woman should be on TV. She does an outstanding job of going through all of this stuff, and unless somebody's standing there with cards in front of her, she just knows, she knows where she's at. So, anything else with respect to that? If not, we will then introduce Chief Dittman, who will share with us the annual fire report. I can see how excited you are.
There's one's right up there. You want to grab one?
Good evening. Linda, would you mind grabbing
Yeah,
some for all
Linda,
of
would you
us?
grab another? Thank you.
It's all good.
Tisk. Thank you. Whose job is that, yours or?
Thank you.
Yes, please. No?
I don't. That's okay.
We can
I got one.
share. I'll sit by her.
Give him. I already know it. I already have it all. I have it all right here.
Really?
I already have it done. So,
I'm on camera right now.
oh, good. Thank you.
Ready?
You're the man.
Well, good evening.
Is your
Nope,
mic on?
you're good whenever you are.
Is it?
Should be.
Sounds like
Okay.
He
it.
says it's on, so I'll speak louder.
Can hear.
So, as in the past, our annual report for the fire department encompasses not only the city of Sturgeon Bay, but the town of Sevastopol, the town of Sturgeon Bay. So you're gonna see statistics for all of our response areas, including the town of Jacksonport for fire inspection. So if you have any questions as we go through it, feel free to ask.
Chief, pull the mic a little closer to yourself so we can hear it. Or tip it, whatever. Thank you.
Is that better?
Not really.
Is it better recorded?
I don't know what to do for you.
What's up, laddie? Is it just a
Is it better
pitch?
on recording?
There we
I'm
go.
getting it through here, everything else.
Well, that's good.
All right,
I can hear, but
go
Can you
ahead.
hear me?
concerned about that.
Mine on mine, so,
All right.
Just you again.
All right, thank you. I said it was old.
So as we go through it, at the beginning is just kind of a cover letter, a little bit about the department, where we've been at. And I think it's important to point out that last year, we ended up at 1,782 calls for service in total. And that's for all of our response agencies and fire and medical. That would be for everybody. That's a 5% total over our 21 calls. And as you see, we go through, the town actually took a little bit of a decrease over past years. But, you know, as we go through and look at it, in 10 years ago, we're at a 62.88% increase, which is a large number. And as we get a little bit further in there, you'll see where we project things are going. Since COVID, we've not seen a downturn really. This year, we've had a couple months that dropped down, but then we've had a couple that have been back up and above previous years. So we're not really seeing a decline from previous years, so. But again, that's just a little bit of information, you know, where we are, what we're looking at doing, things like that. As we move on, we're gonna just mission statement, statement of values, which is the same, that none of that has changed. Our staffing for 2021, we had a couple retirements, or we had a retirement, and one of our part-time guys move up. We do currently have, in 21, we have 3 individuals on our fire department that live within the town of Sevastopol. We've had a couple individuals that have retired from part-time ranks, so if anybody's looking for a part-time job, here's my 2-cent plug. We're taking applications. Come on and join us, you'll have lots of fun. But we still do currently have 3 individuals on the department that live within the town of Sevastopol. The next page is just our stations, our main station at 421 Michigan Street. Again, we share that location with City Hall and the police department. And then our west side station, which is right in front of the Sturgeon Bay Utility Building by the beautiful solar sunflowers. As we keep going, just our equipment apparatus, we are getting close to, thankfully, the end of our vehicle replacement. We have 2 new vehicles that are being built right now, which will complete us out for quite a few years. So I was I don't know if I want to say lucky or unlucky individual that ended up replacing the majority of our vehicles. So just in the time frame in our regular replacement. So you can see we're in a very good position with our vehicles. We're not having anything breaking down, say knock on plastic or wood or whatever it would be. So the next page with the large green graph is going to just give a breakdown of our total 1,782 calls for service in last year. As you see, a third one down, to town of Sevastopol had a total of 63 calls, of which 56 were fire related. Now it says fire calls, but understand that's anything that's not medical. So that could be false alarms, it could be water rescues, anything that falls outside of EMS falls under is a fire related call.
Do we have any actual record of structure fires?
We will. We'll get to that on the next page.
Next page?
Yep.
I'm ahead of you, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Average response times. We put this one in there. I personally don't like this one for the reason that it's all dependent on where our calls are, right? Whether we've had years where our non-emergent time is less time than our emergent time, and that's just based upon where our calls end up. So, we could have had all non-emergent times right by the city and elsewhere. So, but you can see that average emergent response time to the town was 8 minutes, 8.15 minutes, and non-emergent was 12.02. So as we talk about that, our response area for the city of Sturgeon Bay and what we cover is about 130 square miles of area. That's including Clark's Lake. That's not including, it includes, but the total amount of miles that we have for shoreline. So it's, in comparison to departments, it's a very large response area. So, next page, I think Dan, this will answer a little bit, and I apologize, I forgot to, I was out of the office all day and I forgot to look one of the stats up. Incident type by jurisdiction, the second row is town of Sevastopol. So you'll see out of the 63 calls, 2 of them were outside or trash grass fires. That all kind of falls into the same category.
3 structures.
We had 3 structure fires that were reported last year, and that's what I don't have is the addresses of those. I'm sure that if we went back and pulled up all your monthly reports that get sent up, they're identified into those. 2 vehicle fires, 7 medical assists. Again, you folks have your own first responder group that does a great job. There's sometimes that they're tied up and they need extra help, whether it's a lift assist or whatever it may be. And certain times that they will call for a little bit of help. 6 ice or water rescue calls. Fortunately,
You're leading the way.
Yep, you lead the way. I don't know if it's good or bad, right?
Gotta be known for something.
Yep, so, flammable combustible leaks or spills, we had 2 of them, a couple carbon monoxide calls, animal rescue, public service, you see they're very small. Alarm activation, no fire, we've talked about this one in the past. Again, this is not a concern of ours, we're not at a point that we feel that it's being abused or that something needs to be done with it. But it is always good to point out that there are multiple alarms that we're responding to and emergent, come to find out that there's no incident. Could be the lack of being able to contact somebody at a lead lodge, for example. We've had a few up there and we've called up there and the clerk or the desk person is trying to figure out what's going on. So as our dispatch is calling or we're calling, we're not getting any answers. So we continue emergent. So that's where that is. Again, that's not at a point where we feel that it's being abused or we have problems. 19 vehicle accidents, that's a hefty number, and usually they're a little bit more involved because of the speeds on the highways through your jurisdiction. We had some assist law or other governmental agencies, there was 4 of those, so that kind of makes up the call structure for last year. As we get back a little bit further, we'll see a comparison for the last 5 years and then 10 years. The next page is our total staff hours, and this is everything that we do with the fire department. And again, it's not all encompassing or 100%, but it kind of gives you a pretty good idea of where we're at. The amount of training hours and community service that we put into the community. Fire inspections is a good one. The town of Sevastopol last year, we reported 86.44 hours of fire inspecting time. Of that, we had 129 inspections, regular primary inspections, and out of that, we had 12 re-inspections. And the re-inspections are driven from some failures or non-compliances, and then we go back and then do a follow-up on it. So just a little bit of breakdown. Incident response, again, these totals are for all of our incidents. Public fire and safety education, that's a big one. We still get out, we're back out in the schools. Thankfully, COVID's controlled a little better, and we can get back out, and we attribute a lot of our successes to getting into the schools and talking with kids and even with businesses. So, vehicle maintenance, things like that, so it's just a little bit of a breakdown where we're at with that. Top of the next page is our incident forecast, and this is what I started talking about in the beginning. So you can see we went back, starting with 2018, and as things are projected, there's a potential that by 2027, so not too terribly far out, it sounds like a long ways, but it's really not, we could be upwards of 2,400 calls for service. Now, how we break that down by community, and you'll see the town did go down a little bit in the next page, but just a projection based upon what we're seeing right now. We know that we are an aging community. We know that services are highly needed, and we just don't see anything going the other way right now. So the picture right below that graph was a little bit of an interesting one. It ended up being a structure fire that we had in the city that actually ended up turning out to be, you'll see the individual in the big green suit, that's a bomb suit. We had to have Brown County Bomb Squad come into town because we found some active and inactive items within this individual's basement. So our call went from a regular structure fire to vacating the property and having the Brown County Bomb Squad come up, which proved to be a very interesting call. So
I would think so.
yeah, it makes you think twice about when we're doing things here. So the next one is just going to be 5 and 10 year comparisons. The first page is the total, and then the city of Sturgeon Bay. But if you go to the second page, will be the town of Sevastopol. So 2022, again, like we said, we had a total of 63 calls for service, of which 56 were fire related and 7 were medical related. We talked a little bit about just the assistance on that. And we compare that to the previous year at 93, so we went down a third. And we're going to take all the credit we can, saying our public education, fire prevention, and all the stuff that we're getting out and doing, it's working. At least that's what we're going to go with. So, but what I will say, I do believe is working. We issued 68 burn permits on behalf of the town last year.
I think that's a major component.
It is, and I think, when we talked about this a few years ago, before we started doing this, we talked about a handful of incidents that kind of got a little out of hand and carried away. And although we are running quite a bit to do, burn permits, it's saving us on the call, So I'm grateful to all of you for recognizing this and working with us. I think it's probably the best thing for the community. We've not had any issues, some minor little things, some people maybe not understanding the process and things like that. But we've had very good compliance. We feel that's come a long way. So I know that Amy and I have talked about this. We try to make sure that she gets the emails. We had a few little hiccups on you guys getting them all. But from our side, I think it's proved to be a very good move for all of us.
I think it's been great, and I personally know individuals that think twice because they know they have to get a burn permit, and it's not through the town anymore, and so they think about what they're doing. So, and I think that's good. And unfortunately, some of that stuff's on Glidden Drive, which is, as if we have a fire there, I'll be moving to Bailey's Harbor. But
Or
anyway,
south, right down to the city. So anyway, I want to point that out. I think that's a pretty good, but that is the lowest year. And if you look back to 2012, we had ended up with 71 calls that year. So don't know how to attribute, more than saying that public education, fire prevention is working, so. And then the last few pages are just gonna be a little bit about our agency overview. Nothing has really changed, we're still a full-service department. Shipboard firefighting still maintains to be a big one, fire prevention, inspections, and pub ed. So we've talked in the past about our training site, which is out by the dog park in the city. For those that haven't seen that, the big burgundy boxes that are stacked up, has proved to be a very valuable resource, not only for our department, other departments in the county have started to take in a little bit of opportunity doing some training in there, and we're able to do things that we can't normally otherwise. So, the old days of getting a house and somebody wanted to tear it down and doing a house burn, with the hoops that are required to go through with the DNR, asbestos testing and abatement, and just the wide gamut of everything, it takes quite a bit. We did one in the city a couple years ago, and it took me about three and a half months to really get everything completely in place, and so it takes quite a bit. So that's where our training site has come in tremendously, so we do quite a bit out there. Ice and water, again, you guys are as Mark said, you guys are the leaders in ice and water calls for our department, which is just fine by us. And then the last page is a little bit on our fire prevention, community risk reduction and public education. So, that also includes car seats. And I don't know if we've talked about that much in the past. Public health is now starting to get back into doing car seats. Other than that, it's been my assistant chief has been the only one in the county that's been certified for installing car seats. 37 car seats doesn't sound like a lot until you have to do it. That's very time consuming. There's quite a bit to follow up with it. So again, all these services that we provide are part of the fees that everybody pays, taxes that are paid, and we're always open to see if there's something else that we're missing or something else we could do to help the town. So with that, if there's any questions or...
Well covered. Any questions? As the chief already knows, we'll be spending some quality time in the next few months. This is the last year. This is the last year of our.
I would think we should be getting a discount because our calls are going down, right?
We're hoping.
For good behavior.
Feel free to repeat that.
That's a hard one to talk about, isn't it? Especially when you see a third drop, right? So, but yes, we will be looking forward to it.
No, the service that you've provided is good, and I think it's been a positive from my perspective.
Thank you.
So I'll look forward to
the burning permits.
the burning permit piece.
I think it was last year too. I think we replaced a bunch of the bulbs at the ball field too. I think that worked out well. We're able to.
I think
we get a
you may get the call again.
Yeah, we're gonna wait till we get a dry enough day to get 85,000 pound truck on the yard.
That is.
Guys have such
So we
heavy
gladly
trucks.
do that. So
I think your firefighters actually like it.
they do. You know what? We look at it as, it's a community service, but it's also training for us. I mean, we're running some of our equipment that we may not run as often. They're getting, it's very valuable for us, even though it's just a community service on their side. So
Plus it gets them out of the station for a little bit.
they're out of the station. Trust me, they are busy. We actually did increase. We finally have a part-time administrative assistant in the office, which is helping us tremendously. Kaylin and I can finally get out from underneath it, but it's helping our guys out too because they've been running around quite a bit. So.
Good. Nice. Well, thank you for coming this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
And Caitlin as well. Anybody from the floor who didn't think to ask? Anybody have a question that they might like to ask? Didn't mean to exclude you. You're off the hook then, Chief. Thank you. All right.
Dan?
Yes.
Or Chairman, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Is there any charge for people that are on the ice that you have to drop?
The question was, do we charge for ice rescue? We don't charge for anything. And that conversation's been brought up multiple times. There's one part of the county that currently charges. We've taken the stance that we don't feel it's, bad things happen to good people. There's a handful of people that take advantage of the system sometime that we pick up on a regular basis. But we never want to get to that point to find out somebody was worried about, incurring a bill, and, it's, bad things can go bad really quick, so we don't charge, we've not talked about that for quite a while. Resource-wise, if we were looking at increasing our fleet, which is something that we may need to be start doing, if we had to look at getting an airboat, there may be some charges and things like that, but.
And there is one now, isn't there?
Well, currently the Coast Guard has 2 airboats and a third one, which is their prototype, of which all 3 are out of service. Have been.
Well, they don't need them now.
Well, funny thing is, 2 weeks ago, we had a call out, in Waypoint 2 weeks ago, we picked up 6 individuals off the ice. We do have one other airboat in the county, that is with our DNR warden, Mike Neal. And typically, once ice starts breaking up and loosening up, he brings the boat down to our station, just because it's between him and another warden, whichever one's closer. But there's many times, they have a large response area, they could be anywhere else in the state with that airboat, and we have absolutely nothing. So it makes it very challenging. But cost-wise, no, there's no fee.
I think that's unfortunate because some people go out there and really don't use their head very much.
Very true, very true.
People that you got off and some kids with them, and supposedly they jumped across the.
Well, that was 2 times ago. That was the 11 folks that we took off the ice. That was about 3 weeks before that, yeah. It gets really hard to determine, when something bad happens to somebody just out of the blue compared to somebody just, being ignorant to the conditions and not caring. So, we always say we treat everybody the same, so it doesn't matter if it's, either way, yes. Without saying something wrong on that.
All right. So we're going to move on and have Ashley Stotts, who is the EMR crew chief, give us a review of the EMRs for 2022. So the floor is yours.
All right, I don't have anything as exciting or elaborate as Tim, but so for 2022, we had 240 medical calls for the town of Sevastopol. That's up from 214 in 2021. Out of those 240, we had 119 in which we had EMR response. That's 121 that did not have EMR respond to. As Tim mentioned, they assist with some of that. That was only 7. The county is now above minimum staffing for the paramedics, which means if nobody takes vacation, if nobody's off on sick, we have 1 extra medic in the station, and a lot of times they're responding to those calls as well if there's no EMR response. And that's not just Sevastopol, that's other municipalities as well. Or if it sounds like something where they're going to need extra hands, that extra medic is also responding. So that is 49.6% of calls that were answered. That doesn't sound like much, but it's up 9.9% from 2021. As far as unanswered calls, it continues to show a trend. Those tend to be in the Gordon Road, Old Highway Road, Egg Harbor Road, South Bay Shore, Walker Road, and the Highway 4257 split area that we simply just don't have any EMRs that can get on scene before an ambulance can be there and gone. So for a lot of our individuals to try and make that response, it's
So it's
not
location driven from the EMRs, either residence or workplace.
correct. We did have 2 new members that came on this year, and then we also had 2 members that retired. One of them being Fred Erickson. He served the town of Sevastopol for 26 years and was one of the founding members of the EMR group. And the other being Linda Schultz, who also served for 26 years, also a founding member, as well as during her time as a first responder, deployed to New York City after the events of 9/11. So we appreciate both of them and thank both of them for their 26 years of service. As far as training, we completed the EMR refresher training in January and February of this year. And EMRs will renew their license. They have until June 30th to complete the renewal. The state made some recent changes, and The renewal period is now good for 3 years, whereas before it was 2. So license is now good till 2026. We are always, as Tim said, recruiting, looking for people that are willing to drop everything at any given moment, especially in that area closer to town. If anybody is interested, you can get in contact with me and Amy can get you that information and we can talk about that. Any questions?
I have a few, but Dick, you want to start?
I just noticed that the town only makes a $13,000 donation to the EMR service.
So that money in there is actually money that was donated several years ago when we were fundraising for DFIDs. So that money is allocated just to DFID supplies. So if you need a new defibrillator, batteries, patches, anything like that. So that fund we don't really touch unless it's for those types of supplies. But the town does support us budget-wise as far as payroll, equipment, supplies, and other things.
That would show up someplace else.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else from the floor have a question?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
So when you mentioned something about the lack of response time on some of the things because of the locations, is that because most of the EMS tend to be from the northern part of Sevastopol, like people, from their areas where they live? So essentially when you're recruiting, you want more people that live in the southern part of Sevastopol?
Yes, so most of our individuals live in the northern end of our response area. We do have a few individuals who are down that way, but again, if it's during working hours, I don't know that we really have anybody who doesn't have another job outside of this. Especially now with both Linda and Fred retiring, not that they don't have other jobs, but they were usually very well in the area working. So a lot of our people, Jason Stotts is one that is closer to home more often now. He went back to farming and is part-time at the hospital, so he has actually been responding to a lot, but again, that's on that northern end as well.
And I will say he's very fast with his response. Unfortunately, I have to say my family has had to use their service more than once this past year. And I will say that the EM that you guys have done an awesome job, and I appreciate that. For
Thank you.
family.
I have a couple questions. Do you ever look at benchmarking the surrounding communities in terms of response to calls versus the town? Is there any of that benchmarking done just to get a perspective on where other communities' EMRs are at?
I haven't compared numbers with them. That's something where each municipality is in charge of their own. So I could reach out to them and try to get some of their numbers.
I'd just be curious to understand, I don't know, 49% may be terrific. I'm just curious as to how we compare with other communities in the county in terms of response. And also the other question I have is active versus inactive. Is there, we have what, 21? Is it 21 yet?
I believe we're down to 19 with the 2 retired members.
Yeah, roughly right. It's between 19 and 20.
Okay. Are there a core group that are active? Obviously Jason and others, but is there an inactive group inside that as well, or?
We definitely have people that are more active than others. We have one individual that comes to mind right now. I believe she only made 1 call last year, but she's away for college. So until she graduates and gets her degree and determines where she's going, we really only get her in the summers, and that's, again, hit or miss because she has another job outside of the county as well.
Well, I'd ask you to just take a look at that, next time and maybe just give us your perspective on that. And then I lied, I have 3 questions. Where do we stand on the bylaws? I know we had talked about that last year. Is that a work in progress or?
Yes, work in progress. I thought winter was going to be slower for everybody, but with planning weddings and things, apparently it was not. So I have been in contact with them about when we can sit down I was hoping to talk with Amy just to see when the meeting room would be available that we could get together in there.
Okay. Good. Feel free. Thank you.
Okay, just to answer Richard's question about the budget, so that 13,000 that is sitting in restricted is left over from, like Ashley said, donation fundraising from a few years ago, but the town does budget about 20,000, like Ashley said, to support supplies, training, payroll, anything that you need, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Last year was 240. As we sit today, we're at 82 calls. I don't have last year's exact numbers with me, but I believe when I looked at this time last year, we were at between 40 and 50 calls, so we're up quite a bit already this year.
And then also, I know Fred and I know Linda Schultz, of course, and yes, they are founding members. And I think it would be nice if the board could recognize them. Yeah. So maybe that, you could do that.
That was my question, I was gonna ask.
That's exactly what I
Did
was
you guys do anything for them?
We have not yet. We are looking
We should
at
definitely get together.
putting something together for them as well.
Well, maybe we could do that in conjunction with the
Yeah.
town
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
And then also, the AEDs, I think they all are on the verge of expiring, or have you received new ones? Are you ordering new ones? I know you want them to be consistent with countywide AEDs and training and things like that, so what is the status?
I believe it was 2 years ago that the company came in and did a testing through everybody in the county, and we had one that was retired out of that and has since been replaced. And then with the defibs for Door County, we received one defib for a member that did not have one.
So you're not replacing any of the AEDs?
Not at this time.
Oh, because last time you replaced them, you were we were generous enough to give them to a couple churches.
Right.
And a couple other.
One at the park.
So we noticed that ours, at my church, that ours is expired as of 2022, but they still
Is
work,
it
right?
the-
I mean,
Is it the pads that are expired or the battery?
the
or-
pads and the batteries are expired. I suppose we could just order new ones, right?
Correct.
Do you know how much
And-
they are?
Not off the top of my head, I'd have to look.
Is that something that we could order on our own, or does it have to go through
I
a
believe
first
you can,
responder?
but I can get
We
with
can
Amy.
order on our own?
Yes, you should be able to, but I can get with Amy as well to get some of those sites
Okay, or just
that
Google
we
it or
order
something?
from to get.
Oh, okay, great. All right, thank you.
Great. Anyone else have a comment? We'll put the EMR piece on a future agenda for those two individuals that retired. I think that's a great idea. Certainly have no problem with that. Right, anyone else on EMRs? Otherwise, we're going to move on to the infamous and fun-loving topic of broadband. That would be Eugene.
Yes,
Thank you, Ashley, by the way.
thanks, Ashley. So, where are we now and where are we going? So for those who were unable to attend the January 23rd public hearing, here are some highlights. The town survey, as well as the Door County survey, showed the lack of reliable internet service in our community. The Communications Technology Committee held over 20 meetings from January of 2022 to December of 22. In July of 22, AT&T, Bertram, Charter, and Ensight were interviewed, followed by a request for information, which was reviewed. A formalized request for proposal was sent to 7 ISPs, internet service providers. 4 responded. The committee did an assessment of the responses. Bug Tussle was selected and recommended to the town board for the following reasons. Bug Tussle will cover the entire town, providing fiber to the premises to all homes and businesses coast to coast. Overall project cost of $6.82 million, including design and engineering, was the most favorable of the ISPs considered. Bug Tussle offered an innovative financing model that results in no tax levy. They offer competitive rates of 300 megabits per second symmetrical speeds for $62 per month. Buried fiber offers increased reliability. They will be burying all the fiber. They provide 2 options for seasonal residents. To help manage your digital transition, they offer Bug Tussle University, which is free. Bug Tussel's call center is located in Green Bay with English and Spanish-speaking staff. My entire presentation of January 23rd is available on the Town of Sevastopol YouTube channel. If you do not have access, we have hard copies available right here. On February 20th, the town board executed a resolution agreement to enter into a public-private partnership with Bug Tussle for the purpose of applying for a broadband expansion grant administered through the Wisconsin Public Service Commission. The grant award should be determined in June. The town board would need to enter into further agreements, including a bonding agreement. Where are we now? A number of municipalities beginning the broadband efforts have expressed a desire to engage with Bug Tussle. Because of this interest, Bug Tussle has asked Sevastopol to slow down a bit to see if the bonding can be expanded to include other towns. So we anticipate more action to be taken this summer, with the hope of work beginning late this summer or early fall. So I'll share with you the Door County broadband survey results. As of April, Sevastopol had 492 responses versus 472 in December of '22. Unserved now being 48% versus 47% in December. That reflects a 23% response rate based on the E911 fire numbers of 2,165. I will need to emphasize data information is extremely important in our effort to obtain grants. So please, if you have not taken the survey, please take the survey. You go to fibernetdoorcounty.org and click Door County Broadband Survey, or if you don't have internet, call 1-608-267-3595. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Any questions from anyone? Yes.
First of all, I'd just like to thank and commend you and your team for the excellent job you guys did at the
Thank you.
meeting. It was very well presented, it was very clear, professional, thorough, so thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
You said the deadline for the grant, is it the grant submission has to be done by June?
No,
or
the
grant
submission
will be
was already done. The awards we'll find out if we got an award in June sometime.
Okay, and
Yeah.
is that a once-a-year event? If we don't get it in June, are we done until next?
Well, there's other grant programs that will be coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the town does not plan to move forward unless we get funding of a certain amount through a grant. Is that correct?
No, I would say not.
This particular grant was a partial area of the town that encompassed mostly unserved or underserved people. Think of it as the core of the town versus the lake shores. And so there was an opportunity and limited funding through this grant, but there was an opportunity to apply for a portion of that. And so we did that. And if we're fortunate enough to get it, it would just make the cost for the rest of the town less. But our plan is to still move ahead. We're just kind of waiting on the other towns to make their decision. Do they want to go? Don't they? So we can do perhaps a larger bonding issue, which might get us more favorable terms.
Okay.
So, but we still plan to move ahead.
Okay, and is there a deadline for that decision from those other municipalities?
We're hoping, on the grant or the
No.
move ahead?
The other municipalities.
We're hoping by midsummer. We know that some of those communities have done RFIs, and I think one of them has done an RFP. I think there were 4 different communities that were in some state of flux, maybe it's 5. So we hope to get it by midsummer.
I think we were hoping for June.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Thank you.
you're
Okay.
welcome. All right, any other questions? Yes, Richard. Raise your hand a little higher, okay? Thank you.
Bertram has any communications with official communications with the board as far as their intentions?
Bertram has not contacted myself or anyone, excuse me, on the board that I'm aware of. There's been some information that's been had through Jess Hatch, which is the broadband coordinator for the county. it's our understanding that Bertram is laying fiber on Matthew Road, different areas, and now on their way up the Highway 57 to Bailey's Harbor.
Which is their head, Door County Broadband is Bertram. Okay.
My understanding is they're also going to expand further. That's fiber, yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, the last formal portion of this meeting is just a year in review, and I took a few minutes to try and tell you a little bit about what happened over the course of the last 12 months plus. And I'll start with the good news, which was if you got your tax bill last year, the town portion, I'm not talking about the school, the town portion of your tax bill only went up 3 cents per thousand. All right, so your tax bill may have gone up from the county, from NWTC, from the school district, and everyone else, but the town's portion went up 3 cents per thousand. So I think you can feel fairly comfortable that we do a pretty good job of managing your money. So just want to make that point. I'll give you a couple things that we did, and I'll start with the park. In the baseball field, there was an issue with drainage, so we hired a company in partnership with the school and made some elevation changes on the ball field, the baseball field, to improve the drainage. That grass is just coming in now this spring, and hopefully that'll solve the problem. Last winter, we were blessed with a dandy snowstorm that knocked out the third base dugout, collapsed it completely. So we were able to reconstruct it through efforts with the school, ourselves, and our insurance company. So the third base dugout was completely redone from scratch. And of course, when you do one dugout, you have to look at the other one and say, gee, that other one really needs help. So this spring, 2023, we were able to get a carpenter out there, and so now both dugouts are in great shape and look good and present the best for the town and the school and the Cubs who use it. We also, after 3 years of trying, were able to take the existing tennis courts, rip them out, and rebuild them, putting in place new tennis court, dedicated pickleball courts, and we took and resurfaced the basketball courts for the players out there as well. Completely redone, repainted, and ready to go. We are going to put some patio furniture, let's say tables, chairs, whatever, out there for individuals who might want to relax and stay out of the sun. We also paved the Whitefish Bay Boat Launch Park area at the end of Whitefish Bay Road and Bark down by the hitching post last year. A nice change to not have all the dirt and gravel and stuff that happened down there in the past. And we started planning and some funding as well to update our concession stand and restrooms, and probably a project that'll get undertaken in 2024. We know that those restrooms over there need some help, and we encourage you to go at home. But we will address that. We started to put some money aside and some ideas to try and fix that problem in the near future. From road construction, we continue to maintain a budget of around $400,000 for road construction in an effort to try and increase the amount of area that we pave, but also to try and offset the cost of increased paving through the county or Northeast Asphalt. We have entered into a project with the DNR and Door County to make changes to Shower Road to improve park access, and as the fire chief would tell you, to help eliminate fire rescue access issues for them when they're responding to one of our many water rescues that appear to happen at either Whitefish Bay or Cave Point Park. So we're going to, and maybe you've heard this at the other meetings, we hope to reposition Shower Road directly into Cave Point Park, taking out some of the curves and also widening it so that we don't have issues with cars parking on the sides, with people getting run off the road on their bikes, and et cetera, et cetera. That's an engineering study which we co-founded with the County of Door is going to start, I think, next month. We've signed the paperwork on that. And once the engineering study is done, the DNR will send out its executives. Okay. They'll send out some people who will then check for issues with any kind of plant species, burial ground, et cetera, make sure that we don't impede in that area, and then hopefully we'll move ahead
And my guess is that would also be a 2024 project, given the need for funding. Last item under road construction, our road tour is scheduled for May 19th.
19th.
If anyone has
9:30.
concerns about your road or want us to check something out, please touch base with either your town supervisor or let Amy know. We'll put it on the list. We'll go out and find all those potholes. We'll jump to communication and technology. Jeannie's already told you where we stand with broadband, the continuing work in progress. For those of you who were here last night, you know we might have a little bit of an audio-visual issue. So we are currently working a project to enhance the board meeting room AV, and we'll get at that hopefully this summer. And last item in that category is we are migrating our TV station broadcast to YouTube. So we are still maintaining our TV station, but if and when that equipment gives up the ghost, we will be 100% YouTube. YouTube gives everybody access from anywhere. There are a couple nice features on YouTube if you've never done it, which is fast forward or pause. So it gives you some capabilities rather than, and it is live, or you can go and watch a repeat of it.
Also, closed captioning is available, but not live. It comes in later.
Also, closed captioning is available, not live, but it comes in later. Thank you.
So does Spectrum still make a payment to the town of Sevastopol?
Yes, and they will continue regardless of the TV station.
Okay.
So, and a TV station may last forever, who knows? But the investments that we've made in it are significant, and they continue to be significant. And we can achieve the same thing through YouTube and increase the base of the access base, because right now, only people with Spectrum can watch it. So, I should say, could watch it. Last item on the Plan Commission. I got to give them kudos because their work effort to ensure our town corridors follow our comprehensive plan has been one of their goals. They do not support projects that are not well thought out and or will change the complexion of our town by the creation of excess storage buildings, amongst other things. Not my most popular thing, but I give them kudos. They've worked hard on a lot of different things. Yesterday, we had a large discussion on the short-term rental, but they've dealt with issues on Pioneer Corner at the corner of 4257 and a variety of other issues to make sure that, you know, our town stays in the character that we'd like it to stay and follow our comprehensive plan. So that's everything from last year. There might have been a thing or two I missed, but I think that recaps the majority of those things. So from there, again, just going back to the agenda, we have a vision on future needs or projects. So if there's anyone here that feels that there's something you can't say anything, Derek, you're an employee. No, just kidding.
Just kidding.
Well, actually, I just want
Go
to
ahead.
say that for the future, once we get the whole internet laid down and everything in the town, just in case the TV station does go dark when it comes to the normal wear and tear and stuff, there is talks of maybe just broadcasting it 24 hours live online once we get everything set up. So I'm still working on ways of getting it done. So, and I am. We have plans of making a contingency plan.
I mean, to your point, Derek, you're right. As part of the broadband, although we haven't really discussed it in depth, Clark Lake, Whitefish Bay, the town park, I'm missing someplace else, are all going to be wired for broadband. And in some of those cases, we hope to put cameras in there so that we can monitor things and also our user base can access, like, for example, who's on the tennis courts, who's at the park, who's using a boat launch, whatever. So that's part of the overall plan. Haven't got very far on that, but much to your point. So, thank you. Anyone else have any ideas or things that we need, projects, concerns, anywhere along those lines? All right. Any elector concerns? Anyone have a resolution?
you don't have to. All right, we're whittling down the list. We're actually down
He's not an
towards,
elector.
pardon me?
I thought maybe Ray was gonna come.
Oh, all right. Before we'll wrap up, I'll just say the announcements would be the 2023 open book is Friday, May 26th. It's going to be here at the town hall, not virtual, at 10 a.m. And the board of review for 2023 is Tuesday, June 27th, and that's beginning at 1 p.m. here at the town hall. Encourage you to go to the open book first. It's your best course of action. And the next thing would be to adjourn to our annual meeting, which will be April 16th, 2024, which is the third Tuesday in April.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business, I would like to make a motion to adjourn to that date.
I would accept that motion, Laddie. A second by?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Vogel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.